Calvary Chapel presents Pastor's Perspective, a one-hour program that gives a biblical and pastoral viewpoint on the theological, social, and practical issues of the day. We'll be taking your calls in just a moment. But first, here's today's host.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Pastor's Perspective, a very special Veterans Day broadcast we have today. I'm Don Stewart. We'll be taking your calls and questions later, so don't call yet. We've got two very special guests on a very special issue we'll be dealing with today, so we're honored to have them on this Veterans Day. And again, we want to give a shout-out at the beginning for the veterans out there. For those of you who are serving or have served in our military, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are heroes, lest we forget. Because of you, we have the freedoms we have today, and we still do have, at least for now, and we'll be talking about that during the program. So God bless you, and thank veterans. If you see a veteran today, go up and thank them for their service to our country. All right, one other thing real quickly, too. CalvaryChapelCostaMesa.com. If you're interested in helping out with the Philippine typhoon relief, Typhoon Haiyan that hit the Philippines. We're all very much aware of that. We have on our website a place where you can go to help with the relief. That's CalvaryChapelCostaMesa.com. All right, Mystery Monday. So we always have mystery guests on Monday, but this is a very special time here because I've got two very, gentlemen that I respect immensely. I'll start with my left here. Attorney Michael Peffer. Michael, we've known each other since how many years?
That's going back a long time.
A long time, yeah. Michael's an old Calvary Chapel guy from college and career back in the 70s or 80s?
It's late 70s, mid-70s.
Mid-70s, and now you're an attorney at law.
Right.
Yeah, and you work for PJI amongst other things, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And on my right here, of course, is Robert Hammond. Robert, you're on the Board of Trustees for the Orange County Board of Education, correct?
Correct, Don.
And what else do you, Robert?
I did just want to say Semper Fi to all my fellow devil dogs out there.
All right. Good enough. Okay. The topic today is going to be a couple things we're going to talk about because these two men are at the cutting edge of what's happening in our society, and particularly in our educational system. And there's two issues we've been talking about. The first one we've been praying for. We've been getting petitions signed to put this back, AB 1266, the so-called bathroom bill. Michael or Robert, do you have any updates on the petition signing and how we're doing on that?
Well, it's my understanding that all the petitions were recorded by Sunday, that is yesterday, and I don't have the update in terms of the exact numbers and as to whether we qualified. We thought we had a really good effort, and we were working right down to, in fact, we had attorneys at the various counties on Sunday.
So do we think we have enough?
Well, I think it's honestly that we feel good about it.
We feel good about it.
But I don't have final numbers.
Okay. How about you, Robert? Any thoughts on that or anything you know, anything different?
I did hear from Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, Gina that's out there. But by the way, for those of you that are out in that neck of the woods, you all need to give a big hug to Gina because that lady,
praise the Lord.
I don't know if she was cloned because she was everywhere. What a blessing. She did share with me that it appears that they have about 620,000 signatures. Wow. But they also acknowledge that we have a few counties that are trying to throw out petitions for such stupid things like, there's a coffee stain or whatever.
Oh,
so,
my goodness.
I'm just asking people to pray and let's, walk by faith.
All right. And that, again, is AB 1266. We want to give a big shout-out to all of you out there who signed the petitions, particularly, though, Jack Hibbs, Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, Brad Dacus, Pacific Justice Institute have been pushing this, and we've been praying that the Lord would give enough petitions signed. So the bill is not put down, it's just moved back for a year, right? In other words, we'll get to vote on it next November if this goes through. That's correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, okay. So the state, but I think once the people in the state of California know what it's about, there's you never know, do you? But there's probably not much of a chance of it passing, or what do you think, guys?
We sure hope that common sense and common decency would prevail. I don't know a lot of people that are excited about the prospect of their boys and girls in school having to go to the bathroom with someone of the opposite same sex or opposite sex, excuse me. So I think that common sense should prevail here.
Okay, now the reason you gentlemen are in here today, we want to talk about something that's not so much common sense, called Common Core. Common Core has been introduced by the Obama administration. It's been going on for about 4 years, if I understand this, being implemented now in some 45 of the 50 states. Let's go talk to Robert Hammond first. Robert, what is Common Core?
Common Core is, in my humble opinion, an overreach by the federal government in trying to dictate to every state in the union to have a common set of standards. The neat thing about America is that we have 50 states, and so each state is supposed to set their own standards. When you have the federal government reaching in, no matter how little or how large, that doesn't give a lot of parental input. It doesn't give any local control. It steals it all away, and it's the proverbial nose of the camel into the tent. It's not long before you've got the whole camel in the tent telling you what to do.
Indeed. Michael Peffer.
I want to add here, first of all, this started out not at the federal government level. It started out by the National Governors Association. In 2009, they convened this Council of Educators, if you will. I'm putting quotes in the air. The educators who decided to put together some common core standards, they call it.
Right.
And what has happened now is that the Obama administration, never to be a stranger to over-governing America, they have now adopted these standards, and the way they're doing it is they're conditioning education dollars on the acceptance of these common core standards. So it's a little more insidious than the federal government creating this and then pushing it forward. They're basically adopting it and now conditioning federal dollars on the acceptance of it.
So in other words, we'll give you the dollars, and they're waving money in front of them, but you have to take our curriculum, our standard, and it has to be standardized across the U.S. Is that the idea?
That's the idea.
Okay. And so, well, someone said, what's wrong with that? We want to increase the standards of our education system here in America. And, many school districts have it very low. And so don't we want to raise everybody up to make them better? What's the problem with that?
Well, indeed, I think if you took it at just basically, well, look, everybody's for having more smarter kids and better educated kids. Of course. The problem here is that education has historically been, as a legal matter, it has historically been a local government. As Mr. Hammond has said here, local government have been responsible for it. Each school district has an entirely separate group of needs than all over the United States. You cannot compare an educational system that's happening here in Orange County, California, to one that's happening somewhere in the Midwest. Right. It's a smaller district, maybe more far-reaching geographically. So one of the fears we have on this is the fact that the federal government's one-size-fits-all solution just simply generally doesn't work. And we're seeing it in all kinds of things now. Healthcare.
I was going to say, like healthcare, right?
Right. And so, we're seeing this happen, and the loss of control of good folks like Mr. Hammond here, who he's elected, the people know who he is, and they get to make decisions for the Orange County Board of Education. Instead, what we're doing is we're substituting the judgment of bureaucrats in Washington and even in governorships throughout the U.S. for their wisdom and their ability to make decisions about curriculum, standards, etc.
So, Robert Hammond, if I get this correctly, does that mean that you couldn't overrule something the federal government tells you must do with respect to education for your particular district?
The short answer is yes. And one of the biggest problems that we see with Common Core is the entire curriculum of Common Core has been copyrighted. So that means that you can't change one iota of it. Now, you can add a few things like penmanship or whatever. They say you can add up to 15%. And so what percentage maybe handwriting is, penmanship is, well, we're not really sure. So that's one of the biggest problems that we have, is that you're not allowed to change anything of it. The second part is all the testing is going to be done online. Now, obviously, you'll have to have the child's name and maybe an ID number in there. But from what we're finding out across the nation is some of the districts have been asking far more invasive questions. But it doesn't matter what questions are or not being asked of the student so they can take the test. The bigger question I have is where is all this information going to be stored? Because if the Chinese can hack Pentagon computers, what makes them think that these computers are going to be safe?
So you've got the data mining going on. That's what's happening. And then just like with the healthcare issues we're finding out now, the privacy, and I think, Michael, from a lawyer standpoint, wouldn't there be some privacy rights that are being violated by this, you'd think?
And we think that privacy issues are one of the key problems with this overreaching of various governmental agencies. We've seen it in the healthcare, where privacy was really kind of a secondary consideration. People's private information was able to be transmitted to other organizations, which is unacceptable. This is healthcare information. Well, the same thing we have here. We see a government here, for instance, in California, who apparently doesn't really care about the sacrosanct nature of a restroom for students, that is AB 1266, taking away all sense of decorum and privacy. So we're rightly skeptical of their ability to look into this and to take care of business relative to privacy. So that's certainly a major concern.
Okay, so Robert Hammond, what's driving this? Why is this push so much for this common core educational system in America? Who's behind this?
Well, some of the people that are behind it, maybe somebody might have, some of your listeners out there may have heard of somebody by the name of Bill Gates. Bill and Melinda Gates, they're some of the people that are funding this. And then on the outside, a lot of people are going to say, well, they're entrepreneurs, they're trying to help out the education system, and I applaud them for that. However, when I see how the whole thing is set up and we lose local control, that's a giant red flag to me. And now some people will say, well, the state's not going to give out the information. And technically they're correct, but what they're not telling you is that when they gather the information up in Sacramento, they just have to allow certain agencies out of the federal government direct access. They can't deny them that, which it comes from the GAO. It also will then be allowed not only with the U.S. Department of Education, but it also has to be allowed by the Internal Revenue Service. It also has to be allowed by the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense. So the state can rightfully say, well, we're not giving information. Well, that's true, but you're not guarding the house either. You're allowing everybody and their brother to have access to it.
And so privacy issue number one, and then the idea of local control. What isn't this country? It's funny. We're talking about this on Veterans Day. What our veterans fought for. When they fought for rights, the freedom. Like I remember Oliver North said when he was the hearings in 1987. He said many Marines died face down in the mud for the rights I'm putting forward right now, and we have to remember that. And the right to privacy, all the rights we were guaranteed in this country, and it seems we're moving away from this. But this would be particularly egregious going along with the the healthcare, what's going on in this world right now. Simply, it looks like that there's forces driving this to where almost like group speak, and reminds me of almost North Korea or the former Soviet Union, and at the same type of you will think this way, you will believe this way. And I think you gentlemen have some examples of some of the egregious thing we ought to be aware of, right?
Well, one of the things we've seen in education, and Mr. Hammond probably can speak to this better than I can, but one of the things we've seen in education is this wholesale thrust towards ideology, and instead of looking at so-called reading, writing, and arithmetic, which every parent cries out with any common sense, instead now we're doing this whole social engineering thing, and of course there's nothing to stop this curriculum while being ostensibly geared towards mathematics and history or language arts, etc. There's nothing to stop this being a way to, again, remove the standards that the community has. And indeed, every community has a different character. That's why we have school boards and school districts and local school superintendents, etc., so that these things are not dictated by the masses. They're dictated by the guy I can see and shake his hand.
Indeed, that's what we poured the tea in the bay for. Wasn't things like that? And many years ago, we didn't want taxation without representation. And so, basically, if I understand this right, what's going to happen down the line, Robert Hammond, is that there's not going to be any representation on the local level. You will do this, you will follow this, because this is for your own good. Or so, are we talking about some of the liberal elites in Washington D.C. who know so much more than each and every one of us? What really is for our own good?
Well, that's one way to put it, yes. At one of our last board meetings here for the county, it was really frustrating to have the board reach an almost consensus that we are powerless to try to stop this because we must listen to the dictates of Sacramento. And what's coming out of Sacramento is you have an unelected group of 11 people who were appointed that are basically the driving force behind Common Core. These 11 are not elected. They're not answerable to anybody, except maybe Governor Brown and Superintendent Tom Torkelson. That just tells you right there we've lost a lot of the local control. Now, to be fair, I know a lot of people, and I speak because I was 7 years in the classroom, 6 of that was special education. I know a lot of teachers are frustrated out there because they have to teach to the test, as it were. Everybody's against that, I think. And the good news is they're saying Common Core gets rid of that, which is true, it does. And I've visited now over 7 schools, and every teacher but one that I've talked to has said, we are excited about Common Core because it feels like, we feel like we're being freed. Well, that's well and good. But unfortunately, I don't think they're looking long term to realize that upon implementation of this curriculum, you have no other alternatives. Now, again, also to be fair, and a lot of the local people here in California will say, such as in 8th grade, when it comes to the state testing, we test our kids at the algebraic level. But a lot of other kids in 8th grade across the nation, they're tested at pre-algebra level. So their test is, in essence, lesser. So they're going to score better. And that's one of the reasons why they're saying California is about 49th in the nation. So they're going to lower the testing here to make it more fair. Make it more fair for the kids in and of itself is fine. But if we're not going to challenge the kids, in other words, if we're going to go ahead and accept a test that's not as rigorous, are we really doing the kids a favor, or are we just simply making ourselves look good at the expense of our kids?
The dumbing down of America, is that another way to put it, gentlemen?
Well, I think in as much as we've seen so much of education go towards this idea, the social engineering, that certainly carries with it the dumbing down of America. It carries with it that we are so intent in framing young minds to believe the way the central government wants them to believe that we're losing out on the very things that made our educational system in America one of the greatest in the world until quite recently.
Now, is it true under Common Core, it's as important as how you got to your answer as what you come up with the final answer to your question, to the question on the test?
There are some questions that are actually, you reward the child for being able to demonstrate how he or she came up with the answer, even if the answer is wrong. One of the best examples I can give in relationship to how I think the testing is going to not truly produce the good results that we want, Don, is that taking math, for example, a student can take a math question, it's on the test, and he's given an example of, he'll look at it on the test, and there's a number line that says 0 to 1. I wish that the people that are watching on this could see a whiteboard. The answers, there'll be 5 answers, and under each answer is a box that says yes or no. And the student's supposed to check yes or no that the number line approximates the example. In and of itself, that's fine. However, each math question will have a rubric to it. It's just a fancy collegiate word meaning that we're going to, pin a couple answers that the kid must get right. So let's say for the example here, that answers 1 and 3 are the rubric. So student 1 comes in and answers 1 incorrectly, but gets 2 through 5 correct. So in essence, the kid got an 80%.
Yeah.
However, because the student missed one aspect of the 2 parts for the rubric, he's considered to fail. He gets 0 points for it. So in essence, you now have a kid that just got 80%. He's told, you don't have mastery of it. You get a 0. Sorry. Student 2 comes in. They get the rubric correct. So they get 1 and 3 correct, but they miss 2, 4, and 5. Well, that's a 40%. But because they got the rubric correct, that student is given a point and is considered now to have math mastery of that problem. So the bottom line is we fail the 80%, we pass the 40%. And I don't know about you, but if I'm hiring somebody to make something for me, or if we're looking for engineers to build a bridge, do we want the 80% or the 40%?
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my question. So this would not work in the real world.
No.
I mean, if you're going to hire someone, he got 80% on his math or 90%, and I don't want the 40% person, but according to this, the 40% person was a lot better than the 80%. It
is, and then if, you could even have then a third student come in, they get 100%, but they will be given the exact same passing grade, as it were, as the 40%er. So now both can go out, in essence, for a job and apply and say, well, we both have mastery. But the question now becomes, Do you really? What kind of mastery? What type of mastery? How much mastery? See, these are questions that are being left in the wind. And so by the lack of having local control, by having a one-size-fits-all, it fails on its face. And so that's part of the aspect that is deeply troubling to me, especially as someone that's been in the classroom.
Yeah. Michael, you're a lawyer and you deal with constitutional issues all the time. Are there some constitutional issues in this whole Common Core that can be litigated, or would you have to wait and see how it fleshes out?
I think we're going to have to wait and see how the implementation fleshes out before we can determine what we can attack and what we cannot attack. But no, there's no question about it that there are privacy and legal privacy concerns and this central control of virtually everything that we have to deal with every single day, which are constitutional issues.
Right.
These are freedoms that we have, and it's interesting to me that for so long in our history here, particularly since 1973, where the United States Supreme Court in Roe v. Wade said privacy is this thing to be enshrined above all else. Now we find less and less and less privacy. So it appears as if the only real thing that you get privacy about is a woman's right to have an abortion. And to me, there's something wrong with that, because we've seen the NSA eavesdropping, no privacy. We've seen the healthcare decreasing privacy. We've seen the California law, AB 1266, et cetera, where we're losing freedom. And freedom, after all, is, once again, another shout out to our veterans, is what they bought, and with their blood and their sacrifice. And we at Pacific Justice Institute are concerned about these loss of freedoms, and we're obviously on the watch. I will say we have created an opt-out form, which we can talk about in a little bit here, and we can get to that. But certainly legally, that's where we're at.
I'm wondering, where is the ACLU in all of this? They're the ones that have already screamed privacy, privacy. Shouldn't they be on your side fighting against Common Core?
Well, you'd think so from a legal perspective, although in fairness to them, I will say that perhaps they're thinking the same way as we are, that there's not a lot of legally, it's sort of amorphous right now in terms of what legal things we can attack. There's not a lot of shape there. And so, perhaps that's where they're at. But I also, we've seen time and time again that ACLU is oftentimes in a liberal ideological framework.
Right.
They're off to the left. And so time will only tell whether or not they'll join this fight.
Okay. Robert.
Don, I just want to encourage all the listeners here, especially those locally here at Calvary Chapel. Calvary Chapel High School is not off the hook on this.
Are you kidding?
They just allowed a bunch of new textbooks into their school, some of which proudly have stamped on there Common Core compliant. So those that think that this is going to be something that they can avoid by going even to Calvary Chapel, well, right now, no, that's not the answer. And in regards to privacy, what Michael's bringing on up, and I'm going to dovetail back onto AB 1266 just for a moment, is that I'm glad that this looks like it will be stopped, but I'm not, rolling over on it just yet.
Right.
I think we need to proceed as if it is going forward. One of the other aspects that was brought up for us at our board is that church schools, such as Calvary Chapel or your Catholic schools, your Lutheran schools, they play a lot of public schools. Well, if the public schools are implementing this, then that means you could have a boy on a girls' team.
Yeah.
So that means that quote, girls' team could come over here to Calvary Chapel. If they have a boy on the team and they still say, well, we're going to use the girls' restroom. Now, maybe Calvary Chapel or you have, Orange Lutheran, you have some of these other schools. And if they say no to that, the referees could forfeit the game, saying that, well, you're being discriminatory. Then the governing body for high school athletics, CIF, they could turn around and forfeit the entire season for the school.
Wow. Implications are amazing. If you just tuned in, this is a special edition. We're live on Veterans Day on Pastor's Perspective. I'm Don Stewart with lawyer Michael Peffer and Robert Hammond from the Board of Trustees for the Orange County Board of Education, talking about this insidious, what do we call it? Common Core. I don't know. What do you call it? Program? What do you call it, Michael?
They're supposed to be standards.
Standards,
it's not yet curriculum. That's going to come, but it's standards at this point, which will become, obviously, curriculum, not being an educator in terms of elementary education.
Yeah, okay, that'll be on not only a local, there won't be anything at the end of the day on a local level. It'll all be a nationalize the education, or if this is go through the way they attend it to. Now, if you have questions, we're going to open up the lines now. 1-888-564-6173, 1-888-564-6173. If you want to ask Michael or Robert a question on this, it's a real worrisome thing here. As Christians, what we've been worrying about here, we've been talking about, Michael, is the old slippery slope, right? In other words, the camel's nose is in the tent. We've seen it with the healthcare thing now. We're seeing it with Common Core. We've seen it with so many other things. At least to this day, we have freedom of speech here. That's a whole other thing, the whole FCC idea. We're not like Canada, not like Australia, where, certain things we would say from the Bible would be considered hate speech. So do you see this, Michael? I know you and Pacific Justice are fighting for these rights every day, as just another example of just, if there's an enemy in this, it's the Christians, it seems, by the federal government, by the powers that be.
Well, exactly. Don, I remember in undergrad logic class hearing about slippery slope being a logical fallacy. But I'll tell you what, I've seen more slippery slope things occurring in our society all the time. And we see it from virtually everything that has happened. We watch what has happened with this push to have a same-sex marriage, and now we've watched this so that it's this whole cascade of ideological implementation of programs moving right to this AB 1266. I mean, it's something that I don't really know anybody that thinks it makes sense to create this whole program that allows children to go in one restroom or another restroom based on their whim and their feelings at the moment. But I think it is creating a slippery slope. Yeah, now
here's the issue that people have brought up, and let's talk about this too with Common Core and AB 1266, what we saw with Prop 8. We voted not once but twice to make Prop 8 the law of the land here in the state of California. And as we know, as California goes, often so goes the nation, right? We set the trend, and yet one unelected judge from San Francisco decided to overturn the will of the people. Is there a worry here that the same thing can happen?
Well, certainly there is always a worry here, because as we've talked about at Pacific Justice Institute time and time again, that this one judge, according to California law, should not be able to overturn this proposition. Yeah. But instead, the Attorney General has basically said, well, that's okay. We'll go ahead and implement this one district court judge's opinion. So right now, the family code still says that it's between a man and a woman, but that's not how it's being implemented. So certainly we see how these Common Core standards, it's all, the trick is in the implementation. How does it work when it gets down to the school district level and to the classroom level? What are these teachers being asked to do? And in fact, are they being asked to strengthen their mathematics or their English language arts, or are they really being given a little bit of freedom to bring forward an ideological position?
Now, after the break, I'm going to ask a question here about teachers. Can they violate this? And is there a chance of getting, the pink slip doing this, or even prosecution maybe for something like that? Because that was my natural thought. If you're going to do this and implement that, and teachers who can still think on their own, at least they're in our country, they've been able to this day, and they realize this is not the best for the students. And if they balk at that, I guess we'll ask the question, do they have to get a different profession? Anyway, we're almost up to a break. This is a very special edition of Pastor's Perspective. This is Veterans Day, and again, we give a shout-out to all our veterans out there. Thank you for the job done. Lest we forget, those that have put their lives on the line for us continue to. If you see a veteran today, thank him or her, and thank them for their service to our wonderful country and the rights that we now enjoy and have because of their service to our country. Again, special edition here, Attorney Michael Peffer, Robert Hammond from the Board of Trustees, the Orange County Board of Education, talking about this Common Core, this implementation that is going on right now of a standardizing national education, and as most of you probably guessed, from a liberal point of view. And we'll be talking about and taking your calls, 1-888-564-6173. If you have questions on that, 1-888-564-6173. And one other thing, at the CalvaryCostaMesa.com website, there is a place where you can give to the hurricane relief from the Philippine hurricane Typhoon Haiyan. There's a place where you can donate to the relief at CalvaryChapelCostaMesa.com. All right, the music says we're up to a break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes, so stay right with us. And we're back with you with the second half of Pastor's Perspective. Very special one on Mystery Monday on Veterans Day, and we're live here today. And we're talking about a very important topic that is here now, front and center nationally. 45 out of the 50 states have adopted this or will adopt this standard for educational, national liberal educational program called Common Core. We're talking about some of the problems with that. My guests are Michael Peffer, the attorney at law, and Robert Hammond from the Orange County. How did I say that? Director? Are you don't run the whole thing, do you?
No, I'm not that part. I'm just simply trustee for Area 1 for the Orange County Board of Education.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Appreciate that. And talk about Common Core and what it means to us and what we can do about it. Now, at the break, I was asking you what we need to talk about. Was going to go back because it's all working together. AB 1266, the implications of that. Because remember, people, here in California, as California goes, so goes our nation. So often we are trendsetters, for better or worse, with Hollywood, everything else going on. People copy us, and we are the first state that made this. Well, we didn't do it. These people, the legislators in the state of California made this ridiculous bill, AB 1266. And Robert, give me this example. Give us all of the example you told us at the break. What could happen if this does become law?
If 1266 becomes implemented, because technically it is technically law.
Right.
If it is implemented come January, you could have a team allow a boy onto their team, say for water polo or for basketball, whatever. Then that team with the boy could set records, and those records, of course, would have to stand for that girl's sports at that particular school. However, upon graduating, if that boy does well enough, the boy then could apply for a woman's athletic scholarship to the Cal States or UCs.
Now, and the question I asked you at the break, let's say the boy wants to go to Rutgers back in New Jersey and get a scholarship there for the women's water polo team or volleyball team or whatever, because he was a world-class performer as it was and set records, whether it be in that sport. Would it be discrimination if they're in New Jersey? They said, wait a minute now, we don't have any such rule. We have girls and girls and boys, and we don't switch over. What about all that?
I have a feeling that the out-of-state university, if they say no, they're looking at a lawsuit.
Exactly.
However, if they say yes, they're going to be looking at a lawsuit,
yes,
because somebody, will probably sue saying, wait a minute, you gave out a woman's athletic scholarship to a boy?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's a no. It's a no-win scenario. There's no good that's going to come out of this. There's no good way to implement any aspect of this law.
Yeah, Michael Peffer, it looks like you people at Pacific Justice are busy enough right now. If this does become law, implemented actually, AB 1266, like Robert said, it is a law. Technically, it hasn't been implemented yet, thank the Lord. It seems that you would be working overtime, wouldn't you, with all the... I can't even imagine what would happen if this became law.
Well, interestingly, indeed, you're right. Pacific Justice Institute right now, that's who I work for, and we are very busy. There's the way that the California legislature is working overtime themselves on this one nonsense piece of litigation after another. And interestingly, on this AB 1266, one of the reasons why we can see that it's really about ideology and not about helping people who we say they're mixed up, they've got some issues, they've got concerns, and they should be treated with respect. But this doesn't do that. This changes the entire medical, I said medical, thinking of Obamacare. This changes the entire education process so that a student merely has to say, look, I feel like a boy feels like a girl feels like a boy, and they can walk through this as if that in fact were true. And it's changing in this system when it could have been done by helping out those people.
Exactly.
And helping them to be, we say as Christians, we want to minister to those people. We want to show the love of Jesus to those people.
Of course.
But what we're saying is this conduct is okay, and therefore the entire school, everybody in the school has to deal with it.
Yeah.
To me, that is incredibly problematic.
Yeah. Let's just hope and pray it doesn't go through. Robert.
And Don, a bill like this has already been passed in Massachusetts in a couple of school years ago. there were some young ladies who went into the locker room to change. There was a boy sitting there naked as a jaybird. The ladies ran out, and they said, "We're not changing. There's a boy in there." Sheriff was called. Long story short, they didn't arrest the boy. They said, well, he claims to be a girl. We have to go by that. So the young lady said, well, then we're not changing until he leaves. Well, so happens that they didn't change, so they're the ones that end up getting a bad grade for the day for their PE class.
Oh boy.
And one of the things I want to add, Don, is that right now, even though this law is not enforced, we're getting calls from students that it is being implemented even when it's not law.
Really?
Even today, yes, we've gotten calls all throughout the state from several different schools and Christian student decides, you know what, I'm not going to stay in this locker room when a girl comes in and you're in a boys' locker room. So what has happened here, and this is why we really have to look at law. Law does more than tell you what you can and cannot do. It sets forth a morality. It sets forth a general understanding of what is good and what is bad. Like it or not, that's what law tends to do. And that's why all these laws, they are mixing up everywhere. And in fact, schools today, some of them don't know how to operate one way or the other.
Indeed. I want to take a call from Sandra from Mongat Valley, New York. And this is a question I was going to ask. She's there with me. Sandra, thanks for waiting. You're on Pastor's Perspective. Hi.
Hi. I'm glad that you're taking up that issue because I'm a retired teacher. Taught high school 26 years, 24 of those years were high school science.
Bless your heart.
And the kids can't read today. They can't spell. It's an abomination. But where in the Constitution does it give the federal government any right to get involved in education?
And you know, that was a great question, Sandra. All right, basic civics, Michael. I thought there was a separation there. Wasn't that the reason America was such a great experiment, that the federal government couldn't reach its big, ugly hand, and everything we do, we make the states' rights? What happened there?
Well, in fact, what happened is that the government, each and every day, the federal government has moved further and further and further into the lives of the American people, with or without authority. We realize what has happened here is that these departments, education department, health and human services department, they have a long reach, and virtually the courts have allowed them to reach further and further on this on the idea of the Commerce Clause, the United States Constitution, and other. I don't want to get too technical, but that has been allowed. So, as far as where they get its authority, I think one of the places is that we give it to them. We allow them to take this more and more and more. And I think it's time that right-thinking people that are Christians, and even people that are not Christians but know this is nonsense, need to stand up and start saying, no, we're not going to accept further and further incursion into our individual rights.
Indeed. Robert?
Well, a quick answer to that wonderful lady. Sounds like somebody I would have loved to have taught with.
Me too.
Basically, the 10th Amendment. You know, if it's not in the Constitution enumerated, then it's reserved for the states. That's, you know, the quick answer. And if I had my druthers, I would, I'd get rid of the U.S. Department of Education, and that would free up a ton of money for us to have a whole lot more local control.
Does this go back to John Dewey? Yes. Yes. Yeah, I remember one of my teachers said we ought to put John Dewey's picture on the destroyer coin because of, okay, that's a whole nother, yeah, I thought you guys would like that. Okay, little inside joke here. Okay. Jeff from Costa Mesa, California. A lot of people are asking this question that they've called in, and Jeff's going to ask it for him. Jeff, welcome to Pastor's Perspective. Hi.
Hi, Don.
Hi.
My question is, how will the Common Core affect homeschooling?
Yeah, great question. Okay, Michael, it seemingly wouldn't, would it?
Well, one of the problems is that oftentimes we get calls at Pacific Justice Institute where the homeschooler is having to order their curriculum through a by virtue of a school district. So, for instance, it might be a charter school that's built of homeschoolers, and then they have to order textbooks, and if it says anything about Jesus, they're restricting the textbooks. And so I honestly, I mean, a lot of homeschoolers are organized differently, whether or not they go through a district or not. But the bottom line is that it's very hard to stop this march, and one of the marches that we see, and Robert mentioned this about textbooks and how it's insidious, because it will become harder and harder to find textbooks that are not quote unquote Common Core compliant, because that's where the marketplace is going.
Indeed, Robert. Homeschooling.
Michael summed it up really well, and maybe some people find it ironic that we now homeschool. Well, we have always homeschooled our kids, and here I am on the Orange County Board of Ed. And one of the big reasons is that things like 1266 pop up, and my daughter just looked at me and goes, "Please don't put me in public school." And I says, "I won't, honey, unless you really mess up." But in regards to the homeschoolers, what's going to happen is that your universities are going to be geared more and more towards what they call STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. Common Core is supposed to address that through the SBAC testing. Well, basically what it's going to come down to is if some of the homeschoolers start applying for, to some of the universities, I could see it coming not too far, where the universities are going to look at the, quote, curriculum, as it were, that was offered by the homeschool family and say, well, it doesn't comply with the STEM requirements. It doesn't comply with the Common Core requirements. You know what? You're going to have to go to the junior college level and take a whole bunch of remediated courses.
No matter how brilliant you test it out or anything like that, or anything. So, in other words, if you haven't followed the regime, what the regime says, then you have to be indoctrinated at the junior college level before you can get into college, I guess is another way of kind of saying it. All right.
Plus, and Michael brought up, too, about the charter schools, and a lot of people don't know this, and hopefully this will, get out, is that a charter school is still technically a public school. So if 1266 does become fully implemented, if Common Core is fully implemented, and you're at a charter school, you then will be mandated to follow all that because you are a public school.
Oh, boy. Right. All right, Apple Valley, California, and John is next on Pastor's Perspective. John, thanks for waiting. You're on the air.
Yes, my condolences to Chuck Smith also.
Thank you.
How he passed away. Yes. Yes, my question is, I have nieces and nephews, and they go to a public school over here in Apple Valley, which is called Phoenix. One of them is junior high, and the other one is the grammar school. And that's kind of effective for them for the restrooms, for the bathrooms also.
Oh yeah. Now, explain that, Michael Peffer. If 1266, which is law, becomes implemented, that goes all the way to what? Kindergarten, right?
That's right. There is no exclusion. This is not just for high school kids.
Yeah.
There is no differentiation. This is a one-size-fits-all piece of evil legislation, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Robert?
He's correct, and there'll even be some places where we have even some pre-K. It'll technically affect that too. So you could have a place where if you have a kindergarten through 6th grade or something like that, well, you could start having a 6th grader using the bathroom with the little kids of the opposite sex.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, we got, hold on. I got Brad Dacus on the line. I better. Brad, you got to call the other number. I need to get, he just called me on my cell phone. I wonder if I can get him on the air here. Brad, let's see. I will text him. Let me get Jen from Temecula, because I did want to get Brad on here during the program. Jen, welcome to Pastor's Perspective. Hi.
Hi, and I missed Chuck already. I've loved hearing him talking on this program. You guys were so blessed to have him,
well,
and so
you.
are we. But my concern is, why is it so impossible for us to just have segregation bathrooms for those transgender people?
In other words, isn't there a happy medium we can do? Michael Peffer, what do you say to that?
Well, Jen, if people were thinking about this from a way that is commonsensical, they would have said, well, look, why can't we just have a restroom in the school that it can accommodate people's needs, their special needs? And one of the things that we've found here is that they don't want anything like that. What they want to do is say, look, this is perfectly normal human behavior, and therefore it's us who has to accommodate them, not them who has to accommodate us. So there's no question about it. It would make sense to do so in a way that is segregates a bathroom or a staff lounge that some schools have talked about, but that's not allowed in the legislation that the legislature put forward.
Robert.
Well, it's a really great question. First off, for us to segregate the bathrooms, I'm not sure if the person meant this or not, but if they're talking about building shall we say, a third bathroom, well, the finances aren't there. But even if the finances were there, which they're not, then as soon as you were to offer that, I guarantee you someone's going to start exclaiming separate but equal. And I brought up this issue at our board meeting here about 5-6 months ago. And one of the and I think this is why when people start bringing laws like this is why the wheels fall off. Because when I pushed the issue at the board, one of the comments that was raised up by staff was, well, what we can do is we could form a committee and we'll make the final determination without the parents' involvement, without the kid being involved, on whether the child truly is or is not transgendered. And I got to admit, my jaw about hit the floor because what I asked, I said, so you're going to take all parental authority away from this family so you can make the determination? I go, I guarantee you, I think if you try that, you will have just found a lawsuit that both the ACLJ and Pacific Justice Institute, along with the ACLU, will gladly join forces to combat.
Indeed. And so it seems like there's really a no-win situation in this, right? As we are looking at this, that if 1266 becomes law, there's so many problems. And now, let's say for a second, I've heard Brad talk about this. We're going to try and get Brad on the air, calling back in a second. Is he on the air with us now? Okay, we got Brad with us. Are you there, Brad? Yeah. Okay,
Hello.
Good. Brad Dacus on the air. You're here on with Michael Peffer and with Robert Hammond. Welcome.
Oh, it's great to be on the program. Thank you.
Thank you for calling. Yeah, I was going to call you and ask if you could give us an update. What's going on with the AB 1266 and all the petitions that were signed?
Oh, you bet. Well, it turned out fairly well, and it looks like we have about 140 to 150,000 extra signatures above what was required. Now, some of those signatures are going to be invalidated because they weren't registered to vote or whatnot. But that's a pretty good, comfortable cushion. So,
praise the Lord.
Overall, we're fairly pleased. Most are anticipating that it's going to be enough, and so people just need to pray. There's a good chance it's going to take about 30 days before the state will certify it and approve it to go to ballot and to be sufficient as far as signatures. But in the meantime, people don't worry, just pray.
Yeah,
and we'll see what God does, and hope for an honesty and integrity, of course, in the accounting process by the state of California.
Yeah, well, we want to give you a great thank you, shout out to you, Brad Dacus, for you and Pacific Justice for your push on this, as well as Jack Hibbs from Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, and pushing this. We've been pushing it here shamelessly on Pastor's Perspective, and the people, it sounded like they responded, right?
Oh, they really did, and Pastor Jack. His was had played an incredible role, in particular, along with, of course, the churches that did get involved, the organizations that got involved, like Capital Resources and others. So it's been a team effort, and I'm very pleased overall with how well things went with a very limited amount of time. And once again, we just got to pray for God's grace to have us on the ballot and to keep it from, which will also keep it from going into effect January 1st.
Yeah.
It's real important. And this is, I also want to remind people that this is a love of Christ matter. It's the people of faith stepping up and saying, we care about kids, and we don't want any of them to go through the agony of having their modesty or privacy violated. And conversely, we also don't want to see transgender students and kids who are working through their issues of gender identity dysphoria to have the wrong direction as well, and it could cost them a lot of harassment and really the wrong kind of care and treatment that they need.
Well, we appreciate so much, Brad, the work that you've done. We have, of course, Michael Peffer and Robert Hammond here talking about Common Core. Let's have some of your thoughts real quickly on Common Core. They've done an excellent job explaining it to us. What's your major worry about that?
Well, my major worry in the long run is actually twofold. One is going to be potential data mining and the potential usage of this information on a grand scheme to invade the privacy rights of families. And we've seen that play out with the class test that we fought so hard and successfully in the courts about 15, 20 years ago. And yet this could be rearing its ugly head again, except in the form of on a national scale. So that's my number one concern. Second is going to be the nonfiction literature that's going to be pushed, and to the extent to which it's going to be pushing perspectives, beliefs, values, ideologies, and agendas that would be clearly divergent to most families who are church-going families who have Christian perspectives.
And sort of maybe a revisionist history of the United States of America, too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And
yes.
Yeah, and we haven't missed the irony of this, Brad. It's on Veterans Day. We're talking about this, where our veterans have, of course, sacrificed their lives, many of them, for the rights that we do have. And so thank you so much for joining us. We're almost out of time. I appreciate your call. And thank you again, Brad Dacus, Pacific Justice Institute, for the wonderful job you've done. We'll just keep on praying. Now, if they want to get more information, give us your website again, Brad.
Oh, certainly. It's simply pacificjustice.org, pacificjustice.org. And we're very grateful for Michael Peffer and the fantastic work he's doing for our office there in Orange County.
Amen.
And serving the people. And of course, I respect Bob Hammond as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Brad. Keep up the good work. We'll have you on here again soon on the program. Okay, Michael.
Always a pleasure.
Okay,
Thanks.
well, God bless you. That's Brad Dacus, President of Pacific Justice, for the wonderful, wonderful job he, Michael, and the rest have done in getting this AB 1266, it looks like, at least put on the back burner for a while. Okay, Michael, here's the big question. Okay, what does somebody do? What do we do now in light of this? What can anybody do?
Well, the one thing that is underscored about this, Don, is the fact that parents need to be involved in the everyday education of their children. And we can help you do that. Go to pji.org and you can get a California Common Core data opt-out form. And what that is there's several categories of data that you're saying to the school, look, you can't give this information to anyone else without the parental permission. And so it can be done. Print it up, give it to your friends, have them print it up, and let's get these things signed and over to the school district and the various locations where your kids are going to school, so that at least we can take one step in the direction. And we've outlined the law in these areas and where we think that this is warranted and allowed, and so we suggest you do that.
All right, thank you. We've got about 2 minutes to go. Robert Hammond, any last thoughts?
Well, thank you, first off, for having us on here, and I think Michael and Brad really brought a lot of things to light.
Indeed.
If people are really wanting to get involved, I'm going to invite them to do two things. One, come to a local board meeting, including ours. Granted, we only meet once a month, but our next board meeting is this Wednesday morning, and come and share your concerns. The second thing is get to know some teachers and find out what do they like, what do they not like, and let the administrators, let the teachers know that you are now going to be involved and concerned, and not for a week, but at least for the school year, and find out all that you can. Why? Because when we get involved and we have opportunities to shine the light and also have the opportunity to share, the love of Christ with people, well, only good things are going to come from that. And I think far too long we've been far too complacent. So, and the Pastor Romaine used to say, if I'm pointing a finger at you, I've got three pointing back at me.
Indeed. Robert Hammond, thank you so much for coming on. Michael Peffer, thank you, gentlemen. That was wonderful, very instructive.
Thank you.
And in the future, when other issues come up, we'd love to call you back on the program here to talk about them, as we're having Brad on from time to time, simply because in the day and age which we live, we've got to know about these things, don't we? The Bible says we don't want you to be ignorant, brothers and sisters, and we don't want to be ignorant here. So this edition of Pastor's Perspective on Veterans Day, it wasn't by chance we did this this by design. On the day, we thank our veterans for laying their lives on the line for us, for protecting the rights that we have in this wonderful country. Many of these rights are being, assaulted by the federal government with its overreach, and we want to do something with the power that we have while we still have it. So get involved, people. Get involved. Go to pji.org, get that form, download it, fill it out, whatever it takes. Show up at the board meeting like Robert said at the Orange County board here, and just become involved. All right, we're out of time. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Don Stewart. Again, we'll be back, good Lord willing, 3 o'clock Pacific time to do another program. So for my guests, Michael Peffer and Robert Hammond, we say goodbye and may the Lord richly bless.
We pray you've been blessed and that you'll join us again for another edition of Pastor's Perspective. The preceding was sponsored by Calvary Chapel and KWVE.